Welcome one more time to the 2025 Carolina Panthers experience. They follow last week's dismal loss to the Saints with a huge sweep of the Falcons, 30-27, a comeback in overtime in Atlanta. Here to talk about it, Locked On Panthers host Julian Council. Julian, what did you make of Carolina's response to that loss last week, especially everything swirling around about practice and preparation?
I guess I can't be surprised that they bounce back, because we have seen this team do this now multiple times this season. The 0-2 start, they followed it up with a 30-0 win against the same Atlanta Falcons. They get blown out in New England and come back and win 3 straight games. They get blown out at home against Buffalo and then shock the entire NFL by winning in Green Bay, just to lose to the previously 1-8 Saints last Sunday. So, yeah, to come back, win this game in overtime against Atlanta, I guess I can't be that surprised, because this has been a part of the team's DNA in 2025. But what did surprise me was the way that Bryce Young played, having a career high and setting a franchise record in passing yards in a game. I definitely did not see that one coming, but I'm not surprised overall that Carolina was able to bounce back after last week and get another win.
We're going to talk about Bryce and his big game, record-setting performance, and what that means and all that since later. But now this team carries a 6-5 record to San Francisco on Monday Night Football, half a game out of the division lead. This is the big leagues now, Julian. Is this team ready for it?
We'll see. I thought maybe they were ready for it after the Green Bay game. And then, as I mentioned earlier, and as we saw all last week, they lost to New Orleans. Not one of the better teams, one of the worst teams in the NFL, just to bounce back today. So it's hard to say, man, about this team, what you're going to get from them week to week. We know that they're capable of beating at least a top-tier team like Green Bay, even though I have my suspicions about just how good that Packers team is, considering that they've lost to this kind of enigma of a Panthers team, and they lost to the Browns and barely beat the Giants on Sunday. But it is the NFL any given Sunday. We'll find out, because that Niners game in prime time, Monday night, as you mentioned, that's going to be a stage for Bryce Young to show that he can continue to put up big numbers, not probably like 448 yards getting on Sunday, but it's an opportunity for maybe them to announce themselves. I know a lot of people would have seen the Packers game regionally, but the whole nation has not had their eyes on this rebuilt Carolina Panthers team up until next Monday night. So we'll find out then whether they're ready for prime time. I can believe that they are, but I can also believe that they're not. And we're not quite sure what we're going to get when it comes to that game in San Francisco, or I guess actually Santa Clara, since they don't play anywhere close to San Francisco anymore.
Julian, it seems like sometimes this team waits to get publicly ripped for something and then goes out and just completely reverses the narrative on it. The passing attack was, light years better than it was last week. 9 different receivers caught a ball from Bryce Young, who, as you mentioned, had 448 yards. What did you think of the game plan going in against Atlanta?
Well, I loved on that first possession, Bryce was 7 of 8 for 68 yards and had found 6 different receivers. We saw Mitchell Evans involved. We saw Tyrell McMillan involved. We saw Jalen Coker, able to get everybody that you wanted to see involved in the passing game over the last, all this entire season finally happened on that opening drive. But we had seen last week they scored on the opening drive, but then they didn't do anything else after that. So to continue to see them have Bryce Young spread the ball around, take some shots down the field, something people have been begging for, it was good to finally see that game plan play out. And you kind of wonder, why did it take until now? What was it about Atlanta that had actually been one of the better secondaries in the NFL this season? I believe Drake May, who threw for over 200 yards against him, was the guy who's had the most success at quarterback this season against this Falcons defensive secondary. So I like the game plan. I'm confused by it in a way, as why is it that it finally opened up this week? But obviously it's positive, as this has been something that Dave Canales talked about. They've been trying to find these opportunities and execute them, and they were finally able to do that today.
All right, defense, Julian, their game plan, it didn't look like they could tackle Bijan Robinson. They were having trouble all first half with Drake London. I know there was a quarterback change due to the Michael Penix injury, but what did you make of the adjustments Ejiro Evero, his staff, and that personnel made second half?
It sounded as simple to me as just tackling guys. You look at that opening touchdown that Bijan Robinson had. You had 3 Panthers, an opportunity to bring him down. There was another play later on in that first half where J.C. Horn had an opportunity to tackle him. Mike Jackson missed a tackle as well. So it wasn't like they weren't in position to make some of these plays. But as we saw back in that game against Dallas when they couldn't stop Darren Waller. They found a way in the second half to shut him out. Just like in this game on Sunday, 91 yards in the second half for Atlanta in second half and in overtime, that is. They had 87 in the second half, not including the 4 measly yards they have in that overtime period. So this Panthers defense dominated them. It was punt, field goal, and then punt. Those were their second half and overtime drives for Atlanta. So I think more so it's just execution and communication more than any sort of like real schematic changes that they made at halftime. And that's kind of been the common refrain that those guys have talked about. They just didn't execute at certain points this season. They didn't execute in the first half. Dave Canal said it at halftime when speaking to the broadcast, and they executed in the second half. They don't really think it was any more changes other than them just doing their jobs.
Julian, if every game seems to be a referendum on Bryce Young here in year 3, how did he acquit himself on this Sunday?
Well, if every game's a referendum, Nick, then he is clearly the franchise quarterback and going to be the all-time greatest that Carolina's ever had at the position. I felt like last week was an overreaction from a lot of people in the fan base off of how he played. And I'm not saying that he should not have been criticized, but like looking at that one game and saying, hey, that's proof that Bryce is not the guy is probably not the best way to go about it. Now, if you looked at in totality, which I'm sure plenty of people were doing, all right, I understood where they were coming from. Like you look at the second half of last season, outside of that, there's been far more bad than good. Than so far this year, while they've won, and Bryce has had those moments like against Miami and against Dallas and in that final drive against Green Bay. He's just not had that consistency. And you have not seen things carry over from the second half of last season. But today, it all came together. And do I expect that he's going to play like this again next week? No, because I have no reason to expect that, considering that most of the time, Bryce doesn't even throw for 200 yards in a game. It's been enough for them to win and to be in a position right now where they're sitting at 6-5, but I told a lot of people last week who were asking me, okay, is this it for Bryce? Like, what's Carolina going to do after the season? I just told them, let the next 7 weeks play out. And that would be my same suggestion this week. Let the next 6 weeks play out, see how we perform, see how the team looks, and maybe we can get a definitive answer as far as what to do with Bryce Young after this year. But right now, you look at him, you got to praise the guy. He had a lot of criticism throughout the week, and what did he do? He went out there, had his best, most gutsiest performance of his career in this win against Atlanta. So I give him a ton of credit, but I also still really have no idea what to think of Bryce Young long-term here in Carolina.
Well, you're not the one making that decision. Dan Morgan is. When you're Dan Morgan, You're sitting in your office and you're looking at a guy pass Cam Newton for the single-game franchise passing record, lead his 10th career comeback win in 2.5 years in the league. I mean, is that moving the needle towards banging that option this spring or not?
Maybe, but you think about Cam, those first 2 games, he came out and looked like the guy. Bryce's first 2 games in the NFL didn't make you think he was going to be necessarily the guy. Now, you got to let time play out, but they got to see more consistency. You see what he's capable of, and that's what's really frustrating, I think, for a lot of people, obviously for fans, but I'm sure even in that building, they know what Bryce can do. They know that they can win with him and that he can be the reason that they win games. It just does not happen very often. This was only the 3rd time in his career where he's thrown for 300-plus yards. He did it back in week 2 against Arizona. He did it against the Packers back in week 16 of his rookie season. Then, of course, he did it today against Atlanta. Like, that is not enough in totality to think that, yeah, that's the guy we want to give a 5th-year option to and $20+ million. But then you think about it, since he's entered the league, he has 10 game-winning drives. That's more than anybody else in the NFL, which is insane that he's above Patrick Mahomes, that he is above Josh Allen, that he is above Jalen Hurts, some of these Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, some of these MVP type of players. But he's able to make it happen when you need him to. So I don't think that they're there yet. And I don't think they really should be. They still got to look at how the things play out. But today is certainly a good reason to why they would want to give him that 5th-year option. But we'll have to find out what happens next week in the 5 games after that. I'm
not one to offer game planning advice to Dave Canales, but I think he should just slap Falcons stickers on the 49ers helmets. Bryce will go for $450. Julian Council, Locked On Panthers. We got 8 days to talk about this one at San Francisco. We'll be listening.
All right.